Hello, I'm Edward Funk. This is podcast number 47. Um, we're getting most of this information from this book, Behind the Door, The Real Story of Loretta Young. Now, the title of this podcast is Loretta Young's Mother Leaves Her Cheating Husband and Heads for Los Angeles. Now, the podcast continues the story of actress Loretta Young's growing up years. The materials I'm using are excerpts, as I said, from Behind the Door, The Real Story of Loretta Young, but it's now available on Amazon as an audiobook in addition to availability in a paper book and an ebook. I hope you order to get your entire Loretta Young story, because I'm just taking excerpts out of that book for these podcasts. So there's a lot more to the story than you're hearing. Now, back to the story. Loretta's mother, Gladys, wasn't one for confrontation. But after discovering Earl was cheating on her, she was determined not to tolerate a demeaning situation. So she packed up and took the children from Salt Lake City to Los Angeles, where her sister, Carlene, they called her Collie, and her husband were living. Gladys's father, Dr. Royal, he was a dentist in Denver, I think, at this point, had provided the financial means for the trip. Los Angeles had grown tenfold since Gladys had been born there, and it now had a population of 500,000 people. Now, Loretta's older sister, Polly Ann, recalled, they arrived by train. We arrived in Los Angeles in the afternoon, and we took a red streetcar that stopped at Hollywood Boulevard and Highland Avenues. That's where that particular line ended. What impressed me as we came into Hollywood were the eucalyptus and orange trees. The eucalyptus trees lined the streets, and orange trees seemed to appear in most people's yards. The smell, the combination was wonderful. Now, meeting us were Uncle Trax and Aunt Collie, and we walked to their house on Summer Street, which was just down the street from famous Lasky Players Studios. Eventually, that would be known as Paramount. They had two daughters, Colleen, who was Loretta's age, and Valerie, who was the same age as Jack. It's Polly Ann's youngest sibling, who was the only boy, Jack. I think he was about 2 at this point. It makes sense later on. You need to understand that Earl's right leg was a prosthesis. Anyway, he had moved to nearby Altadena and was working as an accountant at the Midwood Country Club. His mother was also living in LA, and it was probably through her that he traced Gladys and his family. Most likely, it was at this time when he re-entered their lives that Gladys moved from the Traxlers into a little rented house on the same street a block and a half away. It was a real reconciliation of sorts. Earl did not actually live there, but he stayed over from time to time, and also they reestablished a joint bank account. And there was enough money for Gladys to hire a maid. Now, something you need to understand in this story was that Sally was absolutely crazy about her father, whereas Polly Ann and Loretta were indifferent, and Jack was too young to be invested. So it makes sense that Sally was the most happy when her father reappeared. She recalled his putting them in bed one night. "All right, come on, kids," he said. "I'll give a nickel to the first one who falls asleep." Then I would say, "Well, I'll go to sleep if you just sleep with us." And he'd say, "Well, yes, I will." Then he'd remove his limb. And since he was our father and we never knew him without it, it seemed perfectly natural. And unless I saw that artificial thing over against the wall, I wouldn't go to sleep. When he was real tired, I would think, "Oh, isn't this heaven? He's going to sleep with us tonight." Per usual, Earl's presence brought a joyous air, particularly on the evenings when the Traxlers and other friends were in the house. These were pre-radio days, but they made their own music. Earl could play the accordion and the mandolin, and Uncle Trax was very good as a piano player. The carpets were rolled up, and the grown-ups danced while the young children and their cousins crept up from their beds and sat at the top of the stairs to listen. But for Gladys, the excitement was hollow. She had been married to Earl for 9 years, and she knew him. Gladys suspected that the focus of his affections extended beyond her, and the old pattern of suspicion and tears was back. Now, it was a summer day, and Earl was going to take Sally with him to the country club where he worked. Part of the day's thrill would be to ride on the back of Papa's motorcycle. She recalled, kids know when there's something wrong in the family, and I asked Aunt Collie, why is Mama so mad at Papa? She won't kiss him goodbye. She said, you're too young now. When you get older, your mom can explain. Earl had been sleeping with a young maid, and Gladys knew it. By the time Earl and Sally returned that afternoon, it appeared that both he and Gladys realized it was time for him to leave. Sally recalled, I was standing in this little tiny hall in the front in front of a cloak closet. And Papa came up to me. He brought a grocery bag full of hard Christmas candy, and he said, I won't see you for a long, long time. He kissed me goodbye, and I cried. Mama was standing at the door. As she looked directly at him, she said, Earl, I don't wish any misfortune that could come your way, but I wish to heaven I'll never see you again, so long as I live. He replied, don't worry, Gladys, you never will, and then turned and walked out the door. Gladys never did, nor did she have any idea where he went, but she quickly discovered that he'd stopped at the bank and cleared out their joint account. What Loretta thought the facts were about her father and his disappearance contributed to her development more so than what the facts really were. The old saying, perceptions are more powerful than reality. It would be another 25 years before she understood that Gladys, in her gentle way, had basically thrown her father out. It would be 74 years before Loretta found out that Mama had left Papa when she packed up and brought her young kids from Salt Lake City to Los Angeles. Loretta had always thought that Papa left them high and dry in Utah. Nor did she understand that Papa had never really lived with him in the house on Selma Avenue. Throughout the childhood years, that that shaped her. Let's just go with that. She had the perception ingrained in her mind that one day Papa just disappeared and cleaned out the bank account on his way, that he had willfully and callously abandoned her. There we go.